Connor Wertz has been a community organizer working in climate and food systems for better than part of a decade, with roots in the youth climate strike movement of 2018 and fossil fuel divestment. He was formerly coached in Tanzanian style organizing while organizing for clean energy in Vermont. Currently serves as the local food access program manager for the Cumberland County Food Security in Portland, Maine, and mainly their cleaning program. How do we develop leadership in volunteers? When resources are limited, can we structure our recruitment to build sustainable programs? These questions are core to how community organizers are taught to build people power. In this session, we'll review some of these basic tenets and apply them in context of gleaning. Thank you, Connor.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. We will see how far we get through this presentation. I'll be interested to see if you all are like, oh yeah, like I do this all the time, duh, or if this is some new stuff for you. But even if you do it all the time, it's nice for you. And if you do need an extra worksheet, it's happy to you can share it with the neighbor as well. But we'll be doing a couple of breakouts again, get to talk to each other. And those will sort of be like your source content for that. And if you're on Zoom, what up? And you should be able to get the worksheet in a link in the chat. So thanks so much for that. All right. So move on. Next slide. Quickly, in the 40 minutes, we are going to talk about volunteer development. What does that mean? What are the pluses and minuses? And then essentially, like, for my background, I started doing more like political stuff. So like, how do we change climate policy? How are we impacting the state house on a, like from, you know, the municipal level all the way up to state? We never got to federal. And I guess I was like, in quotes, formally trained in order to do things like that. And so then when I got a role as the local food access coordinator and the cleaning director, I entered in, at least in my context of my organization, it was very much like, we are like part of the charitable food system and like volunteerism and all of that stuff. And it was a very different mindset in how we interact with our volunteers than the political movement world. When we were like, we are part of building a better world, we were like doing this together, and we were like developing leadership potentially. I inherited a cleaning program that was like, you know, yay, this is fun, and like we get to like go home and feel good about ourselves after that, which is still an important part of why we do things. We need to keep things light, but at the same time, there could be underpinning like better systems behind that. So this is just me. I'm a New England boy. I do go to Dunkin' sometimes, but not all the time. And I do a little bit of farming and gardening. I lived in Vermont for 6 years before moving to Maine, and I love mountains and the ocean. Pretty much it. So I'd love to hear from the crowd. Also, anybody on Zoom can raise their hand and speak up. But when you engage with volunteers in your work, what are some of the great things about that, and what are some of the challenging things? Yes, anybody can speak up, and I'll repeat into the microphone. Any thoughts?
They always say they want more notice, and we always tell them it's not necessarily possible. And then you give them more notice, they don't use it.
Yeah, volunteers sometimes like predictability in a chaotic leading environments. Anything else? Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say insurance liability.
Insurance liability, getting into the legal aspects of things. What do we allow, or like legally as a society, allow volunteers to do? Yeah.
So addressing on the challenging part there, we get a lot of very enthusiastic leaders that they sign up when we send them the welcome letter and explain everything to them, and they show up in 1 or 2 leave, that's it. They don't show up after that.
Yes. The huge question of, I'm sure many of us have volunteer email lists that are like 5 times or 10 times the size of the volunteers who actually are showing up, right? So that's one of the things we're gonna dig into is how do we almost like increase our conversion percentage, sort of like, how are we opening the door and pulling this? Okay, 1 or 2 more pluses and minuses, yeah.
We might not share the same personalities, but we share a lot of the same principles.
Right. So working with people can be hard sometimes. Yeah.
We found that figuring out accessibility, not just that they have to do physical labor, but also that they usually have to have some kind of transport to the box outside the center.
Huge one, I think for cleaning, and as we think about volunteer, again, the volunteerism thing and like expanding that beyond the like privileged and wealthy people who want to like give back with their time, like those are the people in Maine at the very least who are definitely like occupying the rank and file of our cleaning networks. They are wealthy, they have access to like cars and transportation, they have time, and they want to like give back. Those are all perfectly valid reasons to volunteer, but we also want to build, a multicultural, like across different classes sort of thing. And again, when we're thinking of a political movement, we want to build a movement like that includes everybody. So it's a real challenge. Okay, I think that's good. Let's go on to the next slide. We're not going to address all of those, but volunteering, man. So when I started the role and I was thinking about working with volunteers, I still had my organizer hat on. And so when I was trying to think of some of the key differences that almost it felt like how I was expected to show up in my role versus like what I was thinking of doing. One, just the word volunteer comes with so many connotations and associations that I fall into the trap of calling people volunteers all the time, and I'm trying not to do that anymore because it almost like relegates you to a position where you are not in power, you're not making decisions, and like volunteers sometimes consider themselves as leaders, but more often than not, I'm at a glean, and there's volunteers. They're asking me so many questions that they're able to answer themselves. And so I'm like, hey, you are a team member here. Like, you can figure out how to wash a carrot and not ask me how to wash a carrot. If it's your first time, I'll show you how to wash a carrot. So there's a level to that. Getting to the volunteers being like, sometimes we have shared values, shared principles. We don't always, and we don't always have shared stories about what we're doing too. And so, very important thing about being a political organizer is we start with a story of what's wrong and where we're trying to go, and everything comes out of that base of what we're trying to solve. So it's a really good way to increase motivation and participation. And then I think mostly I think I'll just end with this last bullet point here. As organizers, we're trying to make a better society and a better world, not just put a Band-Aid on a broken system. And so it's interesting working within like food banks and charities that are essentially designed to put a Band-Aid on a broken system, while informing and trying to educate volunteers to be like, how do we build something new? How do we like build the power to sort of totally change this, and so that food insecurity is not something that in the wealthiest country in the world we're okay with as a society. All right, and then next slide. This is just very simple graphic about how organizers can work, and this is sort of like in a renters coalition example. You know what I mean? It's like you start with a problem, you understand what's wrong. Then we got to talk to people in the community and figure out if we're all experiencing that problem. Not everybody is on the same page about the fact that food insecurity is a problem, and that we need to work together to solve that. And so that's sort of at the very beginning of what we do when we're trying to build a movement. Then we need to understand the power that we have as well. I think that can be hard when we're volunteering in food pantries. Is that we're like helping somebody out a little bit, but we're not experiencing a sense of like collective power. But on the flip side, gleaning is this really empowering thing with regular opportunities for engagement. And in that sense, like when I was coming from being a political organizer from Vermont, I would like work really hard to like get people set up to like talk to a legislator or something like that. It could be like a month's work for like 1 hour long meeting, like one break that goes well. For Gleans, there's like constant opportunities to engage new people and to like bring them in, like, you know, weekly. You know, you always have a chance to have somebody new and to sort of like get them into your system. I think we're gonna skip this reflection for time. So it's a really easy, simple concept, but we're gonna sort of break it down and try to apply it in your own experiences in your own organizations. The way I was trained as an organizer is to roughly break people into different categories of involvement. And you know, I was in charge of like the entire state of Vermont for this one organization. There's no way me as an individual can get to every single county in Vermont to meet all the legislators, et cetera. And so, and I think as leading coordinators, we feel a similar sense. There's so many places you can be, so many food that we need to get. You can't be everywhere at once. And so we are trying to develop like core leaders and people who can take that responsibility. And in as many interactions with volunteers or team members that I have, I'm sort of always have this filter on if I'm like, are you somebody who can engage more than you are right now? And how do I get you to do that? It's not like a tricking thing. Like it's really just like opening the door and allowing people to step in to sort of an empowerment that they often want to have. And the three different ladders are base, taking action, and leadership. So base is essentially somebody who's aware of your work. There's sort of like everybody and like everybody who knows you. And then, but the base is like people who are reading your emails as well. And but maybe not going with the taking action is people who have moved their feet at least once. Like you said, you know, they came to a glean once or twice, but maybe that's it. Or they come to gleans all the time, but that's all they do. They're not bringing their friends along. They're not like, you know, telling the story, getting more engaged in the community. And then the leaders are people who are really like being empowered and kind of like moving with a certain sense of autonomy, which I think is really important when we're trying to like build a relatively decentralized, powerful movement. Okay, so this will lead us to our first breakout room, and it's this side that says practice, and it has build a task ladder for your gleaning program, each step of the ladder of engagement. I don't know if I have a, go to the next slide. Yeah, I'll talk about that later. So you all can like, we'll have different opinions about who goes in base and taking action. Don't take it like super literally, but what I want you to do is think about your organization and think about what sort of things people in your base do. They read my emails. They're things people who are taking action do and things leaders do. Spend a couple minutes on that. The more important part of this exercise is to think about, if I have a person who is in the taking action category, how do I get them into the leadership category? Like, what are the ways that I'm inviting them in to more empowerment and more leadership? Any questions about this? Seems to make sense. Okay, we're gonna roll silent reflection for 5 minutes and then talk to your neighbor for the next 5 minutes. Okay, I'll cue you. You can chat a little bit if you need to. Okay. Okay, so that was about 5 minutes. Let's just start opening up to your neighbors or your table, I would say. Let's start with the prompt. What does your organization do that you think works really well to bring people up the ladder of engagement? So how does your organization, you know, take the people on your email list and then get them out to the glean, or take the people who are doing the action and get them into leadership? Question?
I was gonna answer.
Oh, yeah, let's discuss it as a table and then we'll do a little bit of things like that right after that, okay? Minutes left, and then, I guess we can do a little Q&A or something like that, so. Any favorite inspiring examples? I want somebody to tell somebody else's story.
Here, I can-
Please, go ahead.
Food board was sharing about how they are raising the bar of the initial expectation. So not just publicizing general volunteer engagement, but publicizing leading volunteer activities
Awesome.
at that next level, as their initial engagement.
Awesome. So just, I'm gonna repeat a little bit in the microphone, but delineating volunteer engagements, it's not just you are a volunteer, they, blah, blah, blah. It's like you can sign up to be a lead volunteer where we have XYZ expectations and you're gonna show up 6 times a year, etc. Okay, who else?
So we had a great conversation about engaging through categorized, pushing out educational materials, but on a categorized basis. What's ripening now, food preservation, and uses of certain fruits, as some examples.
Awesome. So in a way, like, once we get to the idea of segmenting our volunteer base, you can then think about how we were communicating to those different segments differently as well. One more? Yeah, go.
I was just sharing that earlier this year, I send a weekly, meeting like email to around 800 people right now. And kind of as an experiment earlier this year, I sent one that said something along the lines of like, and you know, it's never too late to come to your first lead. Because I have around 250 leaders, and I'm emailing 800 people, and like 5 new people sign up that week. And I think I just come to understand that this lead alert list could actually become somewhat of a newsletter. People are reading my alert and paying attention. And I think just like the direct invitation to people who were like, oh, that's me, I have a lead.
Yeah.
It was a really great experience.
In our like society, it can be so isolating, and that like having somebody specifically invite you to do something important and say, I need you, it can be a somewhat radical act in and of itself, you know, and that can be scaled to so many different types of engagement. Simply inviting to share food or a potluck or something, to come to their first clean, but also having a sit-down conversation with a volunteer who's been around maybe 5 or 6 times and be like, you're consistent, you're engaged, we need you to step up. Do you have the time to do that? And like, here's what we need. That's an organizing conversation that can really harness a lot of power for your.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight Madeline was talking to us from Atlanta about the social aspect of volunteering and how important that is for folks of all ages, honestly. And they were talking about having like an adventure aspect to leading, which I think is super cool. And like taking folks to a farm or to a space to do the glean, but then post glean do like a group venture and like have that be paid for by the organization. But have that be not just a volunteering opportunity, but also an opportunity to then like hang out and have fun in addition to having a great time. So I think that's really cool.
Great, so just as a recap, that's a way to go from base building or maybe low taking action into increased engagement is to have a social function after where people are connecting, kind of having fun. Yeah. So I hand over here, then we're gonna move on.
Yeah, formally leading network. I feel like thinking back on the meeting days now, I still work with volunteers. And we're really focusing on social events. And as you were saying is that you know, leading is going to be events, music, parties, and talking about leading, and then like even just sort of like educating. But the other thing that I would love to know if other people have already done this. Design sort of like different kinds of meeting experiences for different levels of volunteers and have people sign up to the kinds of like have a variety of different kinds of, you know, social time, picking apples, like no stress, get what you want to, you have to clean this field for this farm because they need to turn over their spinach greenhouse and we're ultimately signing up to like kind of like a workforce base of right, like rock, and then be able to like really put fun training volunteers to know that there's a variety of different kinds, and then like help them understand what they're signing up to in advance, so that you're not putting them or you in a position of tension. Farmer, food access, full volunteer expectations, which have become really difficult to navigate.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess to try to summarize, it's like not all gleans are the same, and you can harness different types of gleans for different types of your base, I guess. Okay, so before we wrap, we've got like 5 minutes left. This part of the printout, which you can also Zoom folks find in the chat, is a case study for this group called Movimiento Cosecha, and they're really powerful grassroots group. And I just think these visuals are really helpful to sort of see how a group of people are like engaging with like ladder of engagement. So you can think of my very simple like phase taking action and leadership, but you can also, you know, think of it in a circular way, or this flow chart is like trying to think of like somebody getting onboarded for the first time, like what is their experience getting deeper and deeper into involvement? Because we're so deep in it, we don't really think about that all the time. And sometimes we create structures that can be like alienating or like sort of like insular by mistake without thinking about it. So that's just something you can take home. I find this super helpful. I think the last thing I'll say, as again, the like political organizing versus volunteerism hat, is social connection is really important. I also believe, want to advocate for like building a better world and sort of thinking of political education and putting forward like a platform that is not necessarily partisan or like to a political party, but is connected to the idea that we're not just here to have fun, but like the world's kind of a fucked up place and we're trying to fix it. You know what I mean? And that sense of shared purpose, feeling like you're part of the movement, is one of the best feelings in the world, and two, like can really increase engagement and build powerful organizations when people believe that they're doing something that is like really worth time. Okay, with that, I think I'll open it up to any kind of questions or just reflections, things that you want to bring into the space. We got a couple minutes.
I'll just say, since we do have employees at Crosswalk LA, we assume that our volunteers might be. We use volunteerism as an informal recruitment method. We observe volunteers closely, see how they're consistent, see what they're good at, what they like, what their vibes are, how they get affected like that or not. It's very clear when someone's not going to work out. But if we just hire people, then you can. And I was a recruiter for a few years. We had a rigid process for educational leaders, so that space. But I still bring that mindset. I can always identify there could be a great person on the team, just based on how we kind of move around each other and how like they are to each other. That matters. You can't put that on a resume. So I always suggest people make it clear. Like I love this that you gave us. It's almost like a user experience. And if it were made transparent to the volunteer group, what they're thinking goals or outcomes to be, I believe people would work for it.
Nice. Yeah, so using the volunteer force as sort of a potential recruitment pool and being intentional about the user interface in a way. So one of the things we didn't get to, because I just don't know about time management, and I probably planned a 90-minute workshop, is the case studies thing. And this was basically like, these are volunteers I've had experience with, and not, you know, every volunteer, when you are kind of coaching them into leadership, can use different types of help and coaching and stepping into, you know, I don't know, being a more impactful team partner and that sort of thing. What I'm trying to get at is just because somebody's like gung-ho and really interested in the work does not mean they are an impactful leader. So I have a couple people who come in, you know, like, I don't know, retired academic professor is one. Awesome person, kind of understands things mostly, but like is not gonna be the ideal team leader because they're used to like a certain amount of respect and like commanding the room, and they're like just changing systems left and right. And they're sort of like, so I actually had to put a boundary down and be like, hey, like, things are, we got a system here and like, we gotta like chill out a little bit. Anyways. Okay, any other comments, questions? Yeah.
2 years ago, we had a speaker who talked about that letter of engagement. So just a shout out for the book, Ready, Set, Go, Playbook for Campaigns, Candidates, and Causes by Casey Carpenter, my life partner. It's on Amazon, and it reiterates a lot of the principles that you were talking about. So there's resources out there if you're looking for, a handbook to implement what you're talking.
Yeah, great handbook resources. I think like the Obama campaign in 2008 got really well known for mobilizing grassroots base and cultivating volunteer leadership in that sense. So that's a good case study you can look into as well. Okay, I think we're up on time, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you.